From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia. He is Doug Stolhand. Thanks for joining us for the Puck Podcast. It is Monday, January the 13th. This is our first period of a three-period podcast. The first period, which some of you are watching on our YouTube channel, recaps the past week in the NHL on and off the ice. Our second period is our interviewer, a special feature segment. This week, Doug will have a chat with Armando Velez, the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, to talk about the defending champs. And our third period is our fan feedback segment, where we read listener emails and we have some news about what's going on with us in our personal lives, and that will include, unfortunately, what's been going on here in LA with these awful wildfires. You can find all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you are seeing, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It takes a second, but makes a huge difference as we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. At last check, we were at 822. If you subscribe, you'll get notified for our latest shows, the Puck Podcast, our weekly NHL review show, the Puck Podcast Hockey Minute, a quick recap of and preview of the night in the NHL every weekday, and our new future Puck Podcast reaction videos.
Eddie and I have worked in sports media for over 30 years combined and are the former voices of the Fresno City College Rams football team and the Fresno Bandits football team, who once famously and literally left a friend of ours at the airport. We've also worked at Fox Sports TV, Fox Sports Radio, and NFL Network, but our passion is hockey, and this is our 19th season covering the NHL. We've been putting out the Puck Podcast every week but one since July of 2006, a streak of over 964 weeks. And as Eddie said, over the next three periods, we're going to tell you how every NHL team did the past 7 days. We'll recap all the trades, signings, suspensions, and milestones, and as always, we cover all 32 teams equally. There were no big NHL headlines to lead off the show this week, but we do have lots of news and notes to tell you about as we recap every game over the past 7 days. Some games will just be a quick score and a note. Others will get more in-depth into. And for that, I turn it over to my good friend, my co-host, and a man who recently told me that the last movie he cried at was Happy Feet 2, Eddie Garcia.
That very last part is a lie. I've never seen Happy Feet 2. Monday, we had 4 games 1 week ago. Monday, we had 4 games on the schedule. And let's start with the Colorado Avalanche knocking off the defending Stanley Cup champion Panthers 3-1. Colorado defenseman Devon Toews scored a pair of goals while Mikko Rantanen added his 24th of the season to extend his point streak at that point to 14 games in a row. He had 24 points over that 14-game streak, 9 goals and 14 assists. Goalie Mackenzie Blackwood made 26 saves in net in the win to improve to 7-1-1 since joining the team in a trade. And Nathan MacKinnon had an assist, giving the NHL's scoring leader 52 assists and 66 points at that point.
Mikko Rantanen also, that's his second 14-game point streak of his career, making him the third Finnish-born player to have multiple 14-plus game scoring streaks. I'm guessing you can guess the other two, Eddie. Finnish-born players with long scoring streaks.
I'm pretty sure one of them played for your favorite team and is maybe your favorite player of all time. And not a very good actor in a movie we watched, Teemu Selanne.
That's correct. And the other was on the wing of the bingo free space for every NHL trivia question, Wayne Gretzky. Jari Kurri, the other one. Teemu Selanne is actually the only one that has had 3 14-game scoring streaks in his career of the Finnish-born players. So, and it also matches the longest active streak of any player this season. Leon Draisaitl also had a 14-game scoring streak earlier this year.
Yeah, fine company for Mikko Rantanen, who
I had an elite player. He was very one of those guys that
our midseason awards. I had him as one of my finalists. You did not, but that doesn't mean you don't think he's also.
No, he's one of those guys that is just. He's not the face of the league. He's not in marketing. He's not the guy that you're going to see in highlights a lot. But when you watch him play, and the Avalanche, I think, have 3 of these guys in Makar, Rantanen, and Nathan MacKinnon, obviously, that you just watch and you're like, these guys are the best in the world at what they do. And 3 players on one team is an embarrassment of riches. It's no wonder they won a Stanley Cup just a couple of years ago.
And of course, Mitch Marner getting all the headlines of the big UFA at the end of the year, but Mikko Rantanen also a unrestricted free agent at the end of this season.
No team has more salary cap than the Anaheim Ducks. Go get them, boys.
I don't think that should happen. The Canadiens edged the Canucks 5-4 in overtime on a goal from captain Nick Suzuki. Keep that in mind going forward. That win moved Montreal, at least for the moment, into the final wildcard spot in the East. Cole Caulfield scored his 22nd of the season, and defenseman Lane Hudson continued his great rookie season with a goal and 2 assists that gave him 30 points on the season. It's the fewest number of games, 42, for a Habs defenseman a Habs defenseman to reach 30 points in franchise history. Hall of Famer Chris Chelios was the old record holder. He had 30 points in 45 games. As for Vancouver, JT Miller had a 4-point night in the loss, 2 goals, 2 assists, while Jake DeBrusk had his 17th of the year. Vancouver captain and star defenseman Quinn Hughes was back in the lineup from injury for Vancouver, but not enough as Montreal gets a big win.
And you mentioned Chris Chelios there. He's one of 3 Canadiens rookies that have had at least 8 multi-point games in a single season. And that's what Lane Hudson accomplished in this one with his 8th multi-point game of the season. Again, only his 42nd game of the season. So he's got a full half season left to try and better that record. But he is the 4th fastest as well of U.S.-born defensemen in NHL history to reach 30 points. The ones that did it faster, one name might surprise you. Brian Leetch, not surprising, 32 games. Phil Housley, not surprising, 37 games. Shane Gostisbehere, 38 games for 30 points. An active defenseman that got off to a scorching hot start, and we were covering it when he did it just a few years ago, it seems like.
No goals for Capital star Alexander Ovechkin in the team's 4-3 shootout loss to the Sabres in Buffalo. Tage Thompson gets his 19th of the year. Alex Tuch, a pair of goals, numbers 13 and 14. And Tuch and J.J. Peterka scored in the shootout to help get their team the victory. Tom Wilson, a pair of goals in the loss for Washington, numbers 17 and 18. And Alexei Protas gets his 18th of the year as well. Ovechkin at that point remaining 23 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record with 43 games to play.
In that one, I will say the Sabres wore their black jerseys, the ones that they were wearing when they went to the Stanley Cup against the Stars many years ago. I absolutely love those jerseys. The big buffalo head on the front, the silver and black, the red accent. And Tage Thompson set an NHL record. Now, granted, it's a recent record because of the technology, but you and I have talked about how much we like the technology being incorporated where it can be in hockey. And they've put the chip in the puck, so they know how fast the puck is moving now. He scored a goal on a 103.7 mile per hour shot, not in a skills competition where you just load up, but in an actual game. That's how hard he shot the puck. And it blew right past Charlie Lindgren. And you can't blame Charlie Lindgren when the puck's coming off at over 103 miles per hour. So Tage Thompson can absolutely fire it during a game action, scored a goal. Absolutely amazing.
And our final game last Monday, the Devils got by the Kraken in Seattle 3-2 to snap a 4-game skid. Andre Palat had the game winner in the third period. Jacob Markstrom had 3 saves of a high-quality variety in this one as he helped New Jersey to beat the Kraken for a 5th straight time. Shane Wright did have a power play goal in the loss for Seattle. He's got 8 goals in the season, 5 of them coming on the power play. Moving on to Tuesday, we had 10 games on the schedule, and the Pacific Division leading Golden Knights took care of the Sharks in San Jose 4-2. Tomas Hertl and Mark Stone each scored their 11th goals of the season. Vegas had won 13 of 15 at that point and took over the points lead in the NHL with 59. Golden Knights also improved to 27-2-5 all-time against the Sharks. That's the best winning percentage in the NHL for one team over another in league history. By the way, Vegas owns 3 of the top 5 spots in that quarter category. Translation, they've been very good pretty much since their first game in their first season, which we already know.
It's the longest road point streak as well. They play well in San Jose. They've gotten at least a point in 17 straight games in San Jose. Now, as you said, Vegas has been very good during this stretch. San Jose not, but still, the occasional loss in regulation here and there has never happened to Vegas in San Jose. It is the 5th longest in NHL history. The Devils had a long streak of 19 against the Rangers. Flyers against the Kings had 21 straight games where they got at least 1 point that lasted over 11 years. Red Wings against the Blues, 21 as well, and the Canadiens against the Canucks, 21. So, yeah, absolute domination. San Jose does not like seeing Vegas come to town, but Vegas very much enjoys their time in San Jose.
Maple Leafs edged the Flyers in Philadelphia 3-2 for their 5th straight win. John Tavares scored his 20th of the season. Austin Matthews his 13th, and Matthew Nyes his 16th was the game winner in the third period. Toronto wrapped up a sweep of the home-and-home series against the Flyers, and at that point had a 6-point lead on Florida for the top spot in the Atlantic Division. In the loss for Philadelphia, Travis Konechny had a pair of goals, numbers 19 and 20. Scott Laughton and Matvei Michkov, teammates, went head-to-head in this one. a friendly fire collision. Both players went down on the ice and were injured. Now, we talked about this on last week's show, so I wanted to bring it up. Toronto had the puck in their own zone, but they had possession of it, and the referee decided to blow the whistle to check on the injured players. Now, had Toronto had the puck in the Philadelphia zone, the referee's not going to blow the whistle then. So, yes, Toronto had possession, but they weren't in a scoring, opportunity. Right. They were in their own end, and with the players injured, the whistle was blown. So that's another example of how that is a judgment call in the mind of the referees.
And it's also likely that when two guys from one team, in this case the Flyers, go down with injuries due to a collision, the scoring opportunity that's going to result is because they are taken out of the play. It's now a 5-on-3 going up the ice. In the neutral zone, it is also a judgment call of, kind of the flow of the play. If they're flying through the zone with the puck, they're probably going to let it go. But if they're collecting themselves or there's a battle for the puck, we're going to blow it dead. So it's not a hard and fast rule. It is a judgment call. In that game, by the way, Austin Matthews did have his 200th career multi-point game, only the fourth player in franchise history, and again, an original six team, to have 200 multi-point games. The others are Matt Sundin, Daryl Sittler, and Dave Keon.
Central Division leading Jets down the Predators 5-2 as Winnipeg goalie Connor Hellebuyck earned his 300th career win. Only two other goalies in NHL history have hit the 300 win mark faster, Jacques Plante and Andrei Vasilevsky. Kyle Connor scored his 23rd of the year, Gabe Vilardi his 19th. In the loss for Nashville, Philip Forsberg snapped an 18-game goalless drought with his 10th of the season. Wild outscored the Blues 6-4, and no pun intended, this one was a wild one. Minnesota jumping out to a 2-0 lead in the first period in the first 2 minutes and 12 seconds. St. Louis then scored 4 straight goals, only to see Minnesota score the next 4 unanswered goals in a game that featured 10 different goal scorers. Matt Boldy gets his 15th of the year in the win for Minnesota. Jordan Kyrou his 18th in the loss for St. Louis. By the way, Marc-Andre Fleury ended up getting the win in relief. Minnesota 3-0 against St. Louis head-to-head this season.
I read a stat, Eddie, that you mentioned the 300th career win for Connor Hellebuyck. And I believe it was the second active goalie to reach 300 wins, but that can't be right because you mentioned Andrei Vasilevsky. We know Jonathan Quick has got it, and Marc-Andre Fleury certainly has 300 plus wins. So I must have misread that stat, but I thought it was surprising at the time. And as you continued on the day, obviously Marc-Andre Fleury, that is more than 300 wins for him in his career.
The Red Wings beat the Senators 3-2 in overtime on a Patrick Kane power play goal. Detroit had won 5 in a row at that point, improving to 5-1 under head coach Todd McClellan. Dylan Larkin gets his 17th in the win, and goalie Alex Lyon for Detroit left the game with an upper body injury after the first period, didn't return to the game. He was replaced by Cam Talbot. For Ottawa, Brady Tkachuk gets his 18th of the season in the loss. The game was the 9th and final game of a franchise record 9-game road trip for Ottawa. Senators went 4-5 over that trip. Also, with the point in overtime for Ottawa in the loss, they did reclaim the final wildcard spot in the East from Montreal.
I mean, 4-5 without Ullmark for the majority of the trip is not bad. Now, it was broken up by the holiday break, so they did get some time at home and some time to rest, but still, as you said, a brutal road trip. Basically, a quarter of their entire road schedule was in that one road trip, as they have 41 road games, and 9 of them were right there.
Talked about the Red Wings winning 5 in a row. The Dallas Stars also won their 5th straight, beating the Rangers in New York 5-4 in overtime. This was a pretty entertaining game. Jamie Benn getting the overtime game winner for Dallas. New York jumped out to a 3-0 lead, only to see Detroit score 3 straight goals to tie it. The two teams exchange goals in the third period before it goes to overtime. And the only time Dallas led in the game was when they scored the overtime game winner. Matt Duchene gets his 16th of the year for Dallas in the win. Vincent Trocheck, 2 goals in the loss for New York, numbers 12 and 13 on the season for him. And Rangers goalie Jonathan Quick, you mentioned, once again denied his 400th career win, still stuck on .399.
Jake Ottinger got his 20th win of the season and only his 30th game played, setting a franchise record previously held by Ed Belfour in 31 games.
Oilers shut out the Bruins in Boston 4-0. Edmonton goalie Stuart Skinner made 26 saves in the win, but he did leave in the first period when he got bowled over in a collision. So Calvin Pickard did come in the game, played 5 minutes and 25 seconds, but didn't see a shot. So I'm not sure if this is a combined shutout or not. Adam Henrique had 2 goals. Connor McDavid gets his 16th of the season. Edmonton had won 12 of 15 at that point and reclaimed second place in the Pacific Division from LA. Boston had lost 5 in a row at that point. And by the way, the Stuart Skinner collision, he tried to stay in the game and was eventually called off by, I'm assuming, the concussion spotter. I'm pretty sure the trainer didn't tell him, nope, you got to come out of the game. So sometimes we see this, sometimes we don't. But I do believe in that situation, he was called off the ice by the concussion spotter in the arena, obviously went through some sort of testing and then was able to come back for the next period.
Yeah, there's it is a combined shutout because Calvin Pickard was on the ice, even though he did not face a shot. But Stuart Skinner definitely earned that win, his 88th win in 150 games with the Oilers. Only 3 goalies in franchise history have had 80 or more wins through their first 150 games. Of course, Grant Fuhr, who was the great goaltender of the 80s, had 85. But surprisingly, Andy Moog, the franchise leader with 92 wins in his first 150 games.
And I know Stuart Skinner, I saw an interview with him afterwards, and he was saying that the player who ran him over, whose name escapes me at the moment, apologized to him in between the first and second period, which he said he appreciated. I think it was Nikita Zadorov who was going to the net. And so he said he knew it was just a hockey play. He was no malicious intent. But he said he was sorry about that in between periods. So
reminds me of our former goalie, Jimmy, who apologized after every single loss, no matter if
every goal he let in.
Yeah, it could have been 1-0, and he would have said, "Sorry, guys." There's nothing to apologize for, Jimmy. But yeah, that is a class act by Zadorov to at least go and apologize. Though you wonder how that's received when you see somebody making their way to the opposing dressing room. We know Tortorella tried to get in there, and that didn't go well.
Well, I don't know if there was an apology in this one, but an incident between the Flames and Ducks. Calgary gets the 3-2 overtime win in Anaheim on a Jonathan Huberdeau overtime game winner on the power play. For Huberdeau, his 17th of the season. Nazem Kadri added his 15th in the win. There was an incident in this game that we wondered if it would result in a suspension. Drew Hellison of the Ducks given a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for kneeing on Connor Zary of the Flames, which resulted in an injury. The good news for Zary was that the result is he will not need surgery, but he is out indefinitely. No supplementary discipline for Drew Hellison in this one. We've talked about this before. Seems the NHL doesn't care about knees. They do care about heads. But I know this was a bit of a controversial call, and you are a Ducks fan, so we'll keep that in mind. But did you want to chime in on this knee-on-knee ejection for Drew Hellison?
Well, I mean, obviously Connor Zary was trying to knee Drew Hellison, and Hellison was defending himself.
Oh.
No, I thought it's a good call. I think he definitely stuck the knee out because to interrupt him. I don't think it was intended to be a knee-on-knee. I think he was just trying to get in his way, but that's the result, and you're responsible for what your actions. So it was absolutely the right call to give him the 5 in the game. I was surprised there was not at least a fine. I didn't expect a suspension because it's Connor Zary, and it wasn't a nationally televised game, and the NHL doesn't care about Connor Zary or games that happen on regional broadcast networks. But I was surprised there was not supplementary discipline because there was a major injury involved and because it was an illegal act that resulted in it. So I don't know if he got a verbal warning of like this is going on your record kind of a file, but if you don't discipline him, he has a clean record going forward. So if Drew Hellison ever comes in front of the Department of Player Safety again, he can say, I have no past transgressions, so you can't use my past against me, which is why I think there should have at least been a fine to put a piece of paper in his file when they go to get it out next time.
Well, that's a disappointing opinion on your part because I was ready to argue with you about this because I thought you were going to defend Drew Hellison. But I don't think there was any dirty intent at all. I think he was trying to deliver a hit. But as you said, even if you don't intend to stick your knee out, the knee-on-knee collision is a dangerous play, and he was delivering the hit, and it was knee-on-knee, and it caused an injury. So I thought it was the right call as well. Although, again, I think no supplementary discipline, probably because, like I said, the NHL doesn't care about knees. But I also think it was because Drew Hellison, I don't think he had any intent on that. It was just kind of a hit that kind of went wrong.
Well, that's not stopped him in the past. I mean, they've done that with accidental or in indirect actions that lead to an injury. It was the fact that we know that they punished the result, and Zary being legitimately hurt, not hamming it up to try and get a call, I thought would lead to supplementary discipline. I thought should. I know. I look at it, the roles were reversed. If Zary was the one delivering the hit on Hellison, I would want Zary to face some sort of discipline beyond the game itself. So I was disappointed in the NHL's Department of Player Safety. Again, that's nothing new. But Drew Hellison is having a great season. That was a very bad moment for him, but I'm sure he will learn from that and position himself better for hits in the future. He is not that type of player. He is a very, very good young defenseman.
Lightning edge the Hurricanes 3-2 on Braden Point's 24th goal of the season with 52 seconds left. Brandon Hagel added his 18th of the year for Tampa Bay as they snapped a 4-game skid. And the Blue Jackets got by the Panthers 4-3 in a shootout. Dmitry Voronkov had a pair of goals for Columbus, numbers 16 and 17. Kirill Marchenko scored in the shootout, the game winner in the shootout. That snapped a 15-game losing skid for the Blue Jackets in Pittsburgh. In the loss for the Penguins, Rickard Rakell had 2 goals, 19 and 20 for him. And Sidney Crosby won his 15,183rd faceoff of his career, passing Patrice Bergeron for the most faceoffs won since they've been keeping track of such things, which is back in the 1997-98 season.
So obviously everybody's pretty recent in that one. I got to think, there's some face-off specialists in the past that would like to lay claim to that, but still an impressive number. And how about this impressive number, Eddie? Dmitry Voronkov, you mentioned having the goal in that game. He now has 12 goals since December 1st, which ties him with Leon Draisaitl for the most in the NHL since December 1st. Red hot, firing the cannon 12 times since December 1st. Dmitry Voronkov picking it up and putting it down for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
We move on to Wednesday, where we had 4 games. Well, there were 4 games originally scheduled. One of them was not played. That was here in Los Angeles, where the Kings-Flames game was postponed. No makeup date has been announced, but obviously this was a result of the fires that are going on in L.A. More on this regarding Doug and myself here coming up in our third period. As for the games that were played,
they played the game on Tuesday in Anaheim. I know Anaheim is Orange County, Orange Country as they're branding it this year, but still, Tuesday night was a hairy night in Southern California, and I was surprised they played the game. And ironic, you cannot script this stuff. If you did, they would call it corny. Earlier in the year, the Hurricanes had a game postponed in Tampa because of a hurricane, and now the Flames have had a game postponed in LA because of a fire. As somebody on social media said, nobody invite the Kraken to town. Kraken attack has suspended the game
for our
in Boston.
For our longtime listeners, they know the good doctor, Dr. Brian Kennedy, who's a friend of ours. He's been on the show before, covers hockey in Southern California. And I know he lives in that Pasadena area, and Altadena got hit hard by the Flames. And so I texted him, and I'm like, hey, man, you okay? And he said, I'm at the Ducks game. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, but we have some friends from Altadena who have evacuated to our home. I was like, oh, all right. Well, hope everything's okay with you. And apparently it was. But yeah, that was you're right. That was a pretty wild night here in Southern California.
Yeah, and it was the right decision to postpone that Kings game.
Agreed, sure. Yes. As for the games that were played, we had the Metropolitan Division leading Capitals edging the Canucks 2-1 in overtime. Pierre-Luc Dubois, both goals for the Caps, numbers 6 and 7 on the season for him. Logan Thompson had 30 saves in net. No goals for Alexander Ovechkin, still 23 away from Gretzky with now exactly half the team's games played, 41. For Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'm glad he's out of LA. He was a big distraction and not very good here, but he is working out well in Washington. Certainly not a superstar, but he's got 33 points in 41 games, and he had 40 points all of last season in Los Angeles. So again, that trade has definitely worked out for both teams. Darcy Kemper coming to LA and Pierre-Luc Dubois going to Washington.
Yeah, and that's the Capitals now just 1 point at that point, I should say, behind the Golden Knights for the best record in the entire NHL, which is absolutely amazing. And it ties their second highest win total through the first half of an 82-game season, this being the 41st game. Their 27th win through 41 games. Absolutely amazing. The second highest. The highest came back in 2015, 2016 when they were 31-7-3 through their first 41 games. We were covering that season here on the podcast, and we covered the last time they won 27 games in their first 41 games. That was back in 2008, 2009. We've been doing this show a long time, Eddie.
We definitely have. The Panthers knocked off the Utah Hockey Club on the road 4-1. Sam Reinhart gets his 23rd of the season, while goalie Sergei Bobrovsky had 26 saves in net. Before the game, it was announced, the NHL announcing that the Florida Panthers would be hosting the Winter Classic at the Lone Depot Park, which you probably don't know because I didn't, is the name of the home of the Miami Marlins baseball team. That will be on January 2nd. So again, Winter Classic in 2026. Panthers hosting the New York Rangers at the ballpark there where the Florida Marlins play. So congrats to the Florida Panthers.
And they announced the state of Florida is going to host both outdoor games next year.
That's
right.
I
don't know if you had that announcement later on. All right. I will save that one, but you know where it's going to be.
I think you do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to be Jacksonville. But I'm glad to see finally a different region involved. Yes. I wish it wasn't the Rangers. I wish it wasn't them again. Let's get some different blood in there. I think that would have been a great Lightning Panthers game. I think the entire state
hate
of Florida,
when you steal my thunder, but yes, I agree.
I think the entire state of Florida could have gathered in that stadium to take it over and make it a celebration of Florida hockey rather than invite an original six team down again for their umpteenth appearance in an outdoor game. It's not special to the Rangers. It would have been special if it was Lightning Panthers in Miami.
The Blackhawks surprised the Avalanche with a 3-1 win. Peter Mrazek, 35 saves in net, while Connor Bedard had the game winner in the third period. Mikko Rantanen's point streak came to an end at 14 games, and teammate and NHL leading scorer Nathan MacKinnon held without a point. Colorado's 8-game point streak snapped as well. All right, moving on to Thursday. 10 games to tell you about. Lightning beat the Bruins, sending Boston to a 6th straight loss. 4-1 was the final. And they moved past the Bruins in the Atlantic Division standings with that win, taking over the number 3 spot. Braden Point scored his 25th of the season for his 600th career point. And goalie Andrei Vasilevsky had 27 saves in the win. Mentioned Florida Panthers hosting next year's Winter Classic. The Tampa Bay Lightning hosting an outdoor game as well. It'll be at Raymond James Stadium, home of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFL. They'll be hosting the team they beat on this night, the Boston Bruins. That game will be February 1st. Of 2026. And I will echo what you said. I understand the NHL wants to get a couple of original 6 franchises involved in with these two teams. I understand what they're thinking, and there are probably a ton of transplants in Florida for both those teams as well. But I agree with you. I do like that we're seeing outdoor games in different places. I'm happy to see the Blue Jackets getting an outdoor game this year, but I agree with you totally. I thought this would have been a great Florida matchup, Panthers versus Lightning, either in Miami or Tampa Bay, whatever. But I was disappointed to see that. I thought that would have been a great, as you said, celebration of hockey, and two teams that have won Stanley Cups that have, enough following. I think that they could certainly sell out or come close to it to those two big venues. So I agree with you. You and I were on the same page on that one.
It seems like I really think the NHL is afraid to not have an original 6 team in these matchups. I don't know if it's the TV networks insisting on the large TV market that comes with Boston and New York and Chicago this year in the Winter Classic, but the NHL has to have the testicles at some point to say, we're doing this because these are two great teams. Tampa and Florida don't need a crutch to get an audience. And it's going to be a great hockey game between the Panthers and Lightning, and that will bring an audience. We have to have faith in our product, faith in our teams, and faith in our players that they will sell this game and give people a reason to watch and not be like, well, hey, everybody, Boston's in it. Well, Boston may not be very good next year. They're not very good this year. And you mentioned their 6th straight loss. Might be time to fire the coach. But I just wish the NHL had some guts to actually make a tough call once and not just keep falling back on the same. And the other thing is they never involve the Canadian teams. So the Winter Classic is going to be between an American Original 6 team and some other team. And it's like, well, we only have 4 to choose from. So it's either going to be the Rangers, the Red Wings, the Blackhawks, or the Bruins. And we just had the Blackhawks. We're having the Rangers next year.
The Red Wings are playing the Blue Jackets.
Exactly. It's tiresome. The other 28 teams deserve better than what the NHL is doing. Sorry for hitting you right when you hit I mean, you were just adjusting, and I
was moving.
I cut you off. Yes.
Hurricanes snapped the Maple Leafs 5-game winning streak with a 6-3 win. Carolina scored the final 3 goals of the game to pull away. Jordan Stahl with the hat trick, goals 6, 7, and 8 on the season for him. In the loss, William Nylander, his 24th, and Austin Matthews, his 14th for Toronto. Upset of the night saw the Islanders shut out the Golden Knights in Vegas 4-0. New York goalie Ilya Sorokin, 30 saves in the shutout, cooling off one of the hottest teams in the league. Captain Andre Lee for the Islanders gets his 19th of the year in his 800th career game.
That is a game that I know you were very happy to see.
I was,
as the Golden Knights, as you mentioned, rarely lose and especially rarely get shut out. I think fans were leaving the arena that night thinking, "What the hell just happened? We came here to see a win like usual. This is not what I paid for."
Stars made it 6 straight wins with a 4-1 win over the Flyers in Philadelphia. Roope Hentz's 19th of the season. Goalie Casey DeSmith, 27 saves in net for Dallas. Flyers dropped their 4th in a row and have, at that point, had fallen into last place in the Metropolitan Division.
I still think we should add a "duh" in front of every goalie's last name. Jonathan DeQuick.
That's a wonder. It's an amazing idea.
Andre DeVasilevsky.
Man, that's a good idea.
Casey DeSmith is just a great name.
The Penguins surprised the Oilers 5-3. Pittsburgh won behind a 4-goal opening period. Ricard Raquel gets his 21st of the season. Sidney Crosby, a goal and 2 assists to move into 9th place on the NHL's all-time scoring list, moving past Hall of Famer Joe Sakic. In the loss for Edmonton, Leon Draisaitl scored his NHL-leading 30th and 31st goals of the season.
Next up for him to catch and reel in and pass, his former landlord and teammate, Mario Lemieux. And again, we were covering the games when he broke into the league, I believe, right? And I think got his rookie year, but it's amazing how well he's played this late into his career.
I know we've been doing it as long as Evgeny Malkin has been playing, because one of our first shows is about him being smuggled out of the country in a car trunk. Remember that?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the next player for him to catch and pass would be Mario Lemieux. He is 80 points shy of Mario at this point, but that's about a season for him. So look for us a year from now with him catching and passing him. Then in short order, it would be Steve Yzerman and the most underrated superstar in NHL history. What's his name, Eddie?
That would be Marcel Dion.
That's correct. And then Ron Francis. And then I don't think he has a chance to catch Gordie Howe. He's still over 200 points shy of him. I don't think he will get to him.
Blue Jackets rolled over the Kraken 6-2. Denton Matejchuk scored his first NHL goal, and Luca Delbel-Baluz scored his first goal in his first game of the season. He had 1 game last year and scored a goal. So Luca Delbel-Baluz, 2 career games, 2 career goals, 1 last season and 1 this season at that point.
4 names, 2 games, 2 goals.
It may seem like 4 names. It's only 3, but
Luca Delbel-Baluz. It's 4 words. It's a hell of a name, and I would say see you next year for another goal, kid.
Yeah, really. Kirill Marchenko gets his 18th of the year. In the loss for Seattle, Eeli Tolvanen had both Seattle goals, numbers 9 and 10. With the win, Columbus remained tied with Pittsburgh for the last wildcard spot in the East at that point.
How about this? The 3rd member of the Sillinger family has made their debut for the Blue Jackets. Owen Sillinger made his debut in this one. How about that?
So let's see. Cole and Mike are the other 2?
That is correct.
All right. The Avalanche hand the Wild a 6-1 loss in Minnesota. Mikko Rantanen scores his 25th of the season. Nathan MacKinnon gets his 15th plus an assist to give him an NHL leading 68 points at that point in the season. Rangers beat the Devils 3-2 in overtime on a Sam Carrick goal. Artemi Panarin added his 17th of the year. And in his return from injury, New York star goalie Igor Shesterkin made 21 saves. In the loss for New Jersey, Jack Hughes gets his 16th of the season.
As a Ducks fan, I was shocked that not only Sam Carrick scored the goal, but that he was on the ice in overtime. That is not a guy that is usually on the ice in overtime. Usually when the game ends and they're going to overtime, Carrick can take off the helmet and hand the stick to the equipment guy. Your night is over, my friend. You're not going to play in overtime, and you're certainly not going to make the ice on the shootout. But hot damn, if he wasn't out there and capitalized on his opportunity, good for him.
Blues down the Ducks, 6-2. Robert Thomas, a pair of goals for St. Louis, numbers 10 and 11 on the season for him. As the Blues jumped out to a 4-0 lead and never looked back, Jordan Kyrou added his 19th of the season. Anaheim netminder Lucas Dostal allowed 6 goals on 22 shots before being pulled. Sabres blanked the Senators 4-0 by an Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's 35 saves. Jack Quinn, a pair of goals for Buffalo, numbers 6 and 7. Ottawa lost in their first game back at home after that franchise record 9-game road trip because of the World Junior Championships. Senators dropped to 2 and 6 since goalie Linus Ullmark went down to injury.
Rasmus Dahlin did get his 250th career assist and became the 5th fastest Swedish defenseman to reach 250 assists in 470 games. The ones that did it faster than him, John Klingberg, former Duck great, 457 games. Erik Karlsson, former Shark great, 433 games. Stefan Persson, I do not remember him, 425 games. And Borja Salming, I've heard the name, 403 games is the all-time record holder.
Moving on to Friday, 5 games on the schedule, and the Kings returned to the ice after their game was postponed because of the fires. They were on the road in Winnipeg, starting a 5-game road trip, and they beat the Jets 2-1 in overtime. Adrian Kempe's 20th of the season won it for LA, while goalie Darcy Kemper made 18 saves. He improved to 8-0-2 in his last 10 starts. The Kings had won 5 in a row at that point and were 13-2-2 in their last 17.
How about going from absolute, almost apocalyptic conditions here in California to Winnipeg? Deep winter Winnipeg. That has got to be a stark difference between getting on and getting off the plane for the LA Kings.
I know we saw it if you watched the NFL playoff games this weekend, but they had kind of an acknowledgement before each game. They did that in Winnipeg. The Jets also wore stickers on their helmets supporting the LA Fire Department, and the Kings have patches on their jerseys. So obviously back to their jobs, back on the ice, but a little disconcerting, I'm sure, leaving that leaving family and friends behind in a tough situation. But big win for the Kings, now 2-0 against the Jets this season.
So are the Ducks. They don't like Southern California. I will say this. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Eddie.
Yeah.
Darcy Kemper got his 10th straight game with at least a point. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he was 8-2 in his last 10 games, 8-2 with the 2 overtime losses or shootout.
Yeah.
He is the 4th Kings goalie to have a 10-game point streak. Can you name the other 3?
Jonathan Quick?
No.
Let's go with Felix Potvin?
No.
Let's go with
a legend from way back. There you go. Rogie Vachon is second with an 11-game streak.
All right. Gosh. There was a who's who of goalies for a while there.
Yes. This is one from when you were first getting into the Kings.
Oh, Kelly Rudy?
No. Rob Stauber.
Oh, with 2 B's.
Rob Stauber.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
I didn't stutter. That's how he spells it.
Yeah.
And the last one it sounds like a game show host from the 70s, Gary Edwards.
Oh.
He is the all-time franchise leader with a 13-game point streak, 7 wins and 6 ties back in the day.
You could have given me 100 million guesses and I wouldn't have guessed that one.
I could have spotted you the Gary and the Edwards.
That's 100% correct. The Red Wings beat the Blackhawks in Chicago 5-3, extending their winning streak to 6 straight. Alex DeBrincat is 18th, Lucas Raymond is 17th, and Albert Johansson his first career NHL goal. Detroit improved to 6-1 under Todd McClellan for the loss for Chicago. Teuvo Teravainen and 2 goals, numbers 8 and 9. Canadians down the Capitals in Washington, 3-2 in overtime. Montreal captain Nick Suzuki scored an overtime game winner for a second straight game. Cole Caulfield added his 23rd of the year. And rookie goalie Jakub Dobeš improved to 3-0 in his young NHL career. Montreal 9-1-0 in their last 10 at that point. Washington goalie Charlie Lindgren, left with an injury, didn't return. And no goals again for Alexander Ovechkin, so still at 23 from Gretzky with 40 games left in the season.
And again, Jakub Dobeš setting historic records with a historic team. The second goalie in franchise history with 3 goals against or fewer through his first 3 career starts. Bob Perot, the only other one that did it, and that was back in 1955. So I don't even trust those stats because they were handwritten. Speaking of stats, Ethan Frank made his NHL debut for the Capitals in this game. And you may not know him, and most people don't, but if you're an AHL fan, you almost assuredly do. He set the AHL record for the fastest lap and the fastest skater. He went around the rink, Eddie, completely around the rink from a dead stop in less than 13 seconds. That guy can cook. And he had his first point waved off due to an icing call, which is brutal.
Yeah, it's funny. I had no idea who he was, but on occasion on my Locked On LA Kings show, I will give an update on the Ontario Reign, which is the Kings AHL affiliate. They've got a player named Samuel Fugimo, who's top 3 in the scoring in the AHL, and I gave the other 2 guys, and he was one of them, and I'd never heard of either of them, but more on him coming up, I believe, right? Hurricanes blank the Canucks 2-0. Journey Goleman Dustin Tokarski only had to make 14 saves for his first NHL shutout since 2022. Tokarski's now 4-1 since joining Carolina. Andrei Svechnikov gets his 14th of the season in the win. Canucks dropped their 4th straight, 0-2-2, and they've been shut out in 2 of those games. And the Utah Hockey Club got by the Sharks 2-1 on a Barrett Hayden goal with 1:32 left in regulation. Utah goalie Kirill Velmelka had 18 saves in the win. And for all the talk of home ice advantage for the Utah hockey team, that was just their 6th home win of the season, fewest in the NHL.
Yeah, 6-9-4 so far. So, I mean, look, it's a better rink. It's a better atmosphere than they certainly had in Arizona the last couple of years playing at the College Arena. But
the results have
not been there. No, they have not been there at all. Very hospitable for the opponents who have gotten 13 wins in the 19 games so far.
And the fans that are going to the Utah Hockey Club home games, frankly, just happy to see NHL hockey, right? Even though
I would be.
Even the other team coming in right now, they're not worried about it. But
it's the honeymoon period for sure. Nobody's yelling fire anybody.
No,
nobody's throwing jerseys on the ice. They're just happy to be able to buy a jersey, which I think just finally started getting sold these last couple of weeks.
A very busy Saturday in the NHL, 15 games on the schedule, and we start with the Capitals beating the Predators in Nashville 4-1. Tom Wilson scored his 19th of the year. Ethan Franks, his first career NHL goal. But the reason we lead off with this one, of course, Alexander Ovechkin does get a goal, career goal number 873, his 20th goal in 27 games this season. He's now 22 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record with 39 games left. The NHL record, he also got his NHL record 61st empty net goal. The Great Eight also reaching the 20 goal mark for a 20th straight season. I believe only Gordie Howe is the only one to do that. According to the Alexander Ovechkin goal tracker, he is now projected to break Gretzky's record Sunday, March 30th at home against the Buffalo Sabres. We shall see.
Yeah, I don't like his chances of breaking it this season. We're past the halfway point. He has 20, and you think he's got 22 goals left in that stick of his this season?
Well, he's got 20 in 27 games, so
yeah,
I'm not putting it past him. I'm not predicting.
I'm not saying it's beyond him. I'm saying it's unlikely.
Yeah. The closer he gets to it, the more they're going to be looking to try and feed him, and maybe he, gets more motivated as well. We'll see. I'm just at this point, I'm not putting anything past the guy. We'll see.
Yep.
Bruins snapped their 6-game losing skid, edging the Panthers in a wild game in Florida. Sam Reinhart's 25th of the season, tied it with 3 seconds in regulation. That was his second goal of the game. And then Boston's David Pastrnak scored his 19th of the year to win it with 2 seconds left in overtime. It was a pass that got deflected off a Florida stick and in. Pasta with a pair of goals as well. Now, before the game, there was apparently a Boston radio host who reported that there was a feud going on in the Bruins locker room. I guess kind of like what's going on allegedly in Vancouver. He said that David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand were at odds, and that Pastrnak had told the Bruins he didn't want to play with Marchand. Marchand came out and blasted that report, told the media, basically, this guy needs to be fired. It's an outright lie, and that there are absolutely no issues between him and David Pastrnak. Pastrnak also backed up what Marchand said, for what it's worth. Believe who you want. I did thought it was a little humorous that the radio host then said something along the lines of, people don't, you're not going to call for my job, or you're not going to object that strongly unless it's true. which I thought was an interesting take from his part. But I don't know what the issue. I don't know what the truth is. But obviously, they had a 6-game losing skid, which they snapped. But when things are going wrong, these things kind of come out. I don't know that there's any truth to it or not. But when things are going bad, things come out. I don't know if they're made up, but they're blown up. But when things are going bad, people like to pile on. So we'll see.
Well, I think a couple things here. First of all, you've been in the media business long enough, and I have as well, that we both know there are reporters and members of the media that like to make themselves the story. And there are other people that like to just report on the story and be in the background. And this blowhard is obviously of the former. He likes to make himself the story and put himself in the spotlight.
This is not a guy who covers the Bruins on a daily basis, and I doubt he even goes in the locker room at all.
So he heard from somebody, and then he parroted that without doing any research of his own, just thought, I'm just going to go with that on the air and say what it is. And then it gets taken to the locker room, and they have to answer about it. It is very much like, as you said, it's like saying, Billy Barty is gay. And then when Billy Barty says, no, I'm not, though thou doth protest too much.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell? I can't win. If I say I am, I am. If I say I'm not, you say I'm protesting too much.
Yeah.
So
if you don't say anything, they're like, oh, they're afraid to address it.
Yeah. Their silence speaks volumes. Listen, blowhard. Shove it up your A and just stay in your lane, buddy. This is not your beat. There's plenty to talk about in Boston sports right now. The Patriots just had one of their worst seasons ever, fired their coach and hired a new one. Talk about that. Leave the Bruins out. Keep the Bruins locker room out of your mouth. Go down there and slap him, Marchand.
Stars edge the Canadiens in Montreal 2-1 in a shootout for their 7th win in a row. Jamie Benn scored the Stars' lone goal in regulation, while Jason Robertson gets the shootout game winner. Dallas goalie Jake Ottinger, 30 saves in net, stopped all 3 shooters he faced in the shootout. Montreal goalie Sam Montembeault, 34 saves in the tough loss. And Patrick Laine was back after missing 4 games due to an illness, scored his 9th goal of the season. Of course, it was on the power play, as all 9 of his goals this year have been with the man advantage.
Does he even go out on regular at even strength?
I don't know. Maybe not. I mean,
stay there, man. We'll tell you when we got the power play. Talk about
they pulled him off the ice in Columbus, so maybe they just put him out there.
They were targeting him there. I am remiss if I don't mention the Bruins for a second. I had a note on them.
Yeah,
we got caught up in talking about the blowhard. David Pasternak's goal with 2 seconds left in overtime is the latest overtime goal in Bruins history. The previous record was Mike Knuble, who scored with 4 seconds left in overtime back in 2004.
I think I saw this week that Mike Knuble was a great answer to a trivia question. He's the only player in NHL history to have played with both Wayne Gretzky and Alexander Ovechkin.
Is that right?
I'm pretty sure I saw that this week. And he didn't even know about it until somebody had approached him about it. And he was talking about how, he was on the Rangers in Gretzky's final year, and talked about how obviously it was like hockey Jesus. And then Ovechkin was a rookie in one of his final seasons, and he was then the veteran, and Ovechkin was the young hotshot. And talked about that. So the Mike Knuble, the only guy, I'm 99% sure it was Mike Knuble, the only guy to play with both Wayne Gretzky and Alexander Ovechkin.
I love those links to the past and how you can go very quickly with players that, as we said, you can go only 5 generations back. Crosby played with Lemieux. Lemieux played with such and such, and you go on back through the years, and pretty soon you're at the origin of hockey in just 6 players. But there was an Angels bench coach that you may not remember, Eddie, but
I do.
You're nodding. Jimmy Reese.
Played with the
and he was the former roommate and teammate of Babe Ruth, and he was the Angels bench coach well into the 90s. And I can just imagine being a player in the 90s, a rookie, a second-year player, a veteran, and just sitting there and listening to him tell stories, firsthand stories about Babe Ruth and how mind-blowing that would be and how much baseball that man saw over his life. And Mike Knuble has got that same thing. I remember playing with Wayne Gretzky. I remember playing with Alex Ovechkin.
I just Googled it, by the way. It was Mike Knuble. I did Google it, so I was.
Well, there you go. And he was wiped off the map of the Bruins record.
That's cool.
for
You
having
brought
the
his name up,
latest
though.
overtime goal. Yeah.
Reminded me of that story. The Jets shut out the Avalanche 3-0 behind 22 saves from Connor Hellebuck for his NHL leading 26th win and 6th shutout of the season. Also, his 3rd straight shutout against the Avalanche in the regular season. You might remember he got lit up like a Christmas tree in the playoffs by Colorado last year. But in the regular season, he's certainly great against them. Nikolai Ehlers a pair of goals for Winnipeg, 13 and 14 for him. And while Connor Hellebuck gets his 25th win of the season. Actually, I don't know. I meant
His
a typo on
26th.
that one. Typo on that one. Winnipeg moved to a tie with Washington for the most points in the NHL at that point was 61. Obviously, with the shutout, no points for Nathan McKinnon in that one. Also, though, some good news on the injury front from Colorado's goalie Scott Wedgwood, activated from injured reserve.
How about Connor Hellebuck, man? He's not an old man, and yet he's already, as I mentioned, 300 career wins. This is his 3rd season with 6 shutouts in a season, which is the franchise record for most shutouts in a season. Granted, the franchise has not had an illustrious past in both Atlanta and Winnipeg, but still, he's got a long time to go here to break his own franchise record. And he is now the 3rd all-time most shutouts by any American goalie in NHL history. The only 2 ahead of him, Ryan Miller, former Duck great, and Jonathan Quick, former King great. So how about that?
Yeah, my typo was, for some reason, instead of Mark Scheifele, I typed Connor Hellebuck. Mark Scheifele got his 25th goal of the season in that win.
There you go.
Winnipeg. Devils got by the Lightning 3-2 in overtime. Jack Hughes and Stefan Nason each scored their 17th goals of the year. Nason gets the game winner in sudden death on the power play. New Jersey goalie Jacob Markstrom improving to 10-2-2 in his last 14 starts. In the loss for Tampa Bay, Nikita Kucherov gets his 18th of the season.
I'm shaking my head because Stefan Nason is a former Duck. I would never have believed he would go on to have 17 goals in a season, much less 17 in 45 games. He has bounced around the league a little bit. He has found a home here. He went from the Ducks to the Devils to the Penguins to the Sharks to the Maple Leafs to the Hurricanes, back to the Devils. His career high was 14 goals in an 81-game season back just last year. 17 and 45, absolutely cooking. Good for him. He's made a career for himself here and is having an all-time season at the age of 31.
Canucks shut out the Maple Leafs 3-0 in Toronto. This was after Vancouver had some travel issues. They didn't arrive into Toronto until a couple hours before the game. But goalie Kevin Lankinen, 20 saves for his 4th shutout of the season. Brock Besser scored just 31 seconds into the game, his 15th of the year, and that was all the offense that Vancouver would need.
I got to think that was much like going back to the junior days. You know, you show up, you get off the bus, you go play a game like your young days. So I got to think the Canucks kind of liked the fact that they arrived late, go straight to the rink. I know it's out of your routine, but maybe you start a new routine. Schedule the plane to arrive a few hours before the game next time for every road trip.
Blue Jackets beat the Blues 2-1. Adam Fantilli gets his 10th of the year, while goalie Jet Greaves had 31 saves in net. Columbus won their 4th straight and moved into the final wildcard spot in the East with that win. Jackets 7-2-1 in their last 10. For St. Louis, 11-8-3 since they made the coaching change. I just wanted to kind of check in and see where they were. Had the magic kind of worn off? Well, they were 9-12-1 before the change. So again, 11-8-3 since the coaching change. Obviously, there was the initial bump. They've cooled off a little bit, but still above 500 with the coaching change.
Yeah.
Oilers rally to beat the Blackhawks in Chicago 4-3. I wanted to say not the best color man in the league for nothing. Edmonton scored the final 3 goals of the game, with Zach Hyman getting his 14th of the season on the power play for the game winner. Edmonton had won 13 of 17 at that point.
Now, with that goal, the Leon Draisaitl has a 17-game point streak against the Blackhawks, which is 4th longest in the entire NHL among active players. That's a very deep cut of Will Forte doing the best color man in the league. How do you think something like that? I have no idea. They don't call him the best color man in the business. That's the one I was thinking of. You're thinking of the movie, correct?
Major League, yeah.
The Will Forte, Jason Sudeikis, ESPN classic combos where he's a completely inept color man for random sports broadcasts is fantastic. I highly recommend going down that rabbit hole. They've got a lot of them. They're fantastic. But Leon Draisaitl did have a point in his 17th straight game against the Blackhawks, which is the fourth longest streak against one team by any player against any team in the league. And he is the record holder. He's got a 21 game point streak against the Canucks that he had from 2019 to 2023. Connor McDavid went 18 games against the Sharks with a point. Sidney Crosby went 19 games against the Sabres from 2007 to 2014. But Leon Draisaitl's active streak is 17 games with at least 1 point against the Blackhawks.
Senators shut out the Penguins in Pittsburgh 5-0. Levi Merlanen had 30 saves in net for his first career shutout, while Shane Pinto had a pair of goals, numbers 7 and 8, one on the power play, one shorthanded. Pittsburgh goalie Alex Nedeljkovic allowed 5 goals before he was pulled in the second period. That is also 6 straight wins for the Senators over the Penguins.
And that's shocking. And they get themselves back on solid footing there after getting shut out in their first game off home game after the road trip. They get a shutout in their second game back.
Florida rolled over the Ducks 6-0. Excuse me, the Flyers rolled over the Ducks 6-0. Samuel Ersson, 22 saves, while rookie Matvei Michkov gets his 13th of the year, and Travis Konechny added a 4-assist game. In his first game in Philadelphia, former number 5 overall pick Cutter Gauthier, who was traded to the Ducks after he refused to sign with the Flyers, was greeted, as you would expect, by the fans in Philadelphia with chants of F you Cutter. Gauthier obviously did not have a point because the Ducks were shut out. The man he was traded for, though, Jamie Drysdale, a goal and an assist for Philadelphia.
Yep, and obviously a brutal game for the Ducks and a brutal return for Cutter. They are without Troy Terry, by the way, who's back at home for the birth of his child. So he's on paternity leave. He's their best forward. That didn't help, but the Flyers, I think, were motivated to stick it to the rookie, and they absolutely did. So Flyers fans got their
pound of flesh.
Pound of flesh for sure. They got to spit all the venom at him. They got the embarrassing boat race win. They leave thinking they're the better person, better team. Okay.
Rangers surprised the Golden Knights in Vegas 2-1. Adam Enstrom's third period goal was the difference. No, I've never heard of that gentleman before, but good for him. Igor Shesterkin, 29 saves in net. It was only the third time this season that Vegas has lost back-to-back games.
And you may not have heard of him, but you will buy him a drink because he beat Vegas in regulation.
100% true. And look, I'm very jealous of Vegas. We all are. But we do.
Yeah, nobody hates bad teams.
That's right. Nobody boos sucky players, or you know what I'm saying, or irrelevant players, right?
Yeah, I sure hate the Sabres. Who? What have they done to you?
I'm good to see them. Buffalo. The Flames edge the Kings 2-1. This was not a makeup of the postponed game. This is already a scheduled game. They were going to play the Flames twice in 3 games. Jonathan Huberdeau's 18th of the year on the power play in the third period was the game winner, and rookie goalie Dustin Wolf, 31 saves in net for Calgary.
And that game was the cherry on top of the poop Sunday that Eddie had as a sports fan.
Yes, on Saturday. Yeah, my wife's Chargers lost in the playoffs. My Steelers lost in the playoffs, and then the Kings also lose as well. So, yeah, that was not good times. Wild beat the Sharks 3-1 in San Jose. Matt Boldy and Marco Rossi each scored their 16th goals of the season for Minnesota. Boldy's was the game winner. Marc-Andre Fleury, 36 saves in net. Still no Kirill Kaprizov this week for Minnesota, but the Wild had won 5 of 6 at that point without him, and also improved to 16-3-3 on the road this season. Just nodding his head.
Yeah.
He's impressed.
I have nothing to add.
The Kraken knock off the Sabres in Buffalo 6-2. Seattle was down 2-0 after the first, then scored 6 unanswered goals, including 4 in the third period. Capo Caco had 2 of those goals. He has 3 goals and 7 points in 10 games since joining the team from the Rangers. Sabres have lost 15 games this season in which they held a lead at some point. Kraken 4-0 all-time in Buffalo, and afterwards, head coach Lindy Ruff called the game, the result, the effort, embarrassing, horrendous, unacceptable, and painful.
That says it all right there. I will say that is the 6th multi-goal comeback victory of the season for the Seattle Kraken, which leads the league. The good news is they're great at coming back from being down multiple goals. The bad news is they are frequently behind by multiple goals. And it is not a long history, but it is the fastest that 2 goals have been scored by 2 players for the Kraken. Oliver Bjorkstrand and Kaapo Kähkönen scored 38 seconds apart. And then a minute 40 later, Kakko got his second goal. So 3 goals within 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And that's the difference. I mean, my goodness, that's the embarrassing, unacceptable, horrific, and painful part of Lindy Ruff's night.
And the Islanders got by the Utah Hockey Club on the road 2-1. New York scored both of their goals in the third period, one from Brock Nelson, the other from Matthew Barzal, with a minute 30 to go in regulation. Marcus Hogberg had 29 saves in the win, his first as an Islander. For Utah goalie Connor Ingram returned from missing 21 games with an upper body injury. He had 30 saves in the loss. And finally, we move on to Sunday's action. We had 5 games to tell you about, including the Red Wings extending their winning streak to 7 in a row following a convincing 6-2 win over the Kraken. Alex DeBrincat gets his 19th, Dylan Larkin his 18th, as Detroit jumped out to a 4-0 lead in the first period. It's the longest winning streak for the Red Wings in almost 13 years, and they are now 7-1. Under Todd McClellan, things have completely turned around for the Detroit Red Wings, and they are absolutely loving coming to the rink right now.
Yeah, the big smiles on the faces, and this game was for, again, an original 6 franchise, so a lot of history with this team. I think it was the 7th fastest that they have scored 4 goals to start a game. They scored 4 goals in the first period in the first 7 minutes and 53 seconds. So if you know how TV timeouts work in the NHL, after the first 6 minutes, TV timeout. After 4 more minutes, TV timeout. 4 more minutes, TV timeout, then end of period. This one, by the time you just got past the first TV timeout, it's already 4-0 or 4 goals in for the Detroit Red Wings and 7 minutes, 53 seconds. By the way, the all-time record for the franchise back in 1980, which is before we were doing the podcast, 5 minutes and 49 seconds to score 4 goals for the Detroit Red Wings. So they've gotten 14 goals on the power play under McClellan, and he has not been there that long. So their power play has absolutely been cooking. And we all know from watching our teams that when your power play is going well, usually the team is going well. If the special teams are doing well, the entire team seems to be doing well, and that is the case. By the way, of all the teams in the NHL, 14 since November or since McClellan took over, the most in the entire NHL. The next closest is the Blue Jackets with 9, and I think those are all scored by Patrick Laine. Or no, he's on the Canadiens, so I screwed up my own joke.
Way to go. The Senators knocked off the Stars, ending Dallas' 7-game winning streak. Matthew Highmore's first goal of the season was the game winner in the third period. Josh Norris added his 15th, Tim Stützle his 14th, and rookie goalie Levi Meriläinen, 24 saves to win his home debut. Also, some news for the Senators. They announced the signing of forward Ridley Gregg. He gets a 4-year contract extension worth $13 million, $3.25 million per season. Ducks surprised the Hurricanes on the road 3-2 in overtime. Cutter Gauthier had a nice bounce back, 2 goals, numbers 6 and 7 for him, including the overtime game winner. In the loss, Andrei Svechnikov gets his 15th. Seth Jarvis did tie it up with the goal he pulled with under a minute to play in regulation. Before the game, the Hurricanes also retired the number of former captain Eric Staal. Do you recall what number Eric Staal wore?
I'm looking in my mind. 11?
Very close.
12.
12, yes. Eric Staal, number 12.
Yeah, how about that? I was very, very surprised that the Ducks won this game. 1, Lucas Dostal bounced back from an awful effort against the Blues when he gave up 6 goals. 2, second night and back-to-back on the road against a very good team. Ducks came in with a big effort. And 3, after getting blown out and embarrassed by the Flyers, Cutter Gauthier, I was extremely happy to see him bounce back with a great game so he could immediately put that bad taste behind him and getting the overtime game winner. He is the 6th youngest player to score an overtime goal in franchise history. The only players that have done it younger, 2 of his teammates, Trevor Zegras and Leo Carlsson, the guy he was traded for, Jamie Drysdale, and a former teammate, Cam Fowler, who holds the record at 19 years and 68 days. But big game for the Ducks to get a win after a couple of real stinkers on the road on this road trip.
Golden Knights defeated the Wild 4-1. Pavel Dorofeyev had a pair of goals, numbers 15 and 16. Tomas Hertl added his 12th, and Aiden Hill, 15 saves in net for Vegas. And finally, the Lightning beat the Penguins in Pittsburgh 5-2. Nikita Kucherov, 2 goals, numbers 19 and 20, including the game winner in the third period. Brendan Hagel gets his 20th, and Anthony Cirelli his 17th for the Lightning. By the way, Pittsburgh had placed forward Evgeny Malkin on injured reserve. He hadn't played all week. And they also announced that forward Michael Bunting missed the game because he was involved in a traffic accident on the way to the arena, but he was apparently okay, but I guess maybe shaken up a little bit, and so they decided not to play him in the game.
How about this? You mentioned both Nikita Kucherov and Brandon Hagel reaching 20 goals in this game. Jake Gensel and Braden Point already had 20 goals. The Lightning are the first team to have 4 players with 20 goals through 41 games since the 1995-96 Penguins. So it has been a while. They have got diverse scoring there, and they've got 4 guys on pace for 40 goals each this season. That is amazing.
All right, so that was the week that was on the ice in the NHL. So let's check the standings as a result of all those games over the last 7 days, and we will start in the Eastern Conference and the Atlantic Division. Right now, your Toronto Maple Leafs are on top with a record of 27-15 and 256 points. They've got a 3-point lead on second place Florida. Mentioned it earlier, but the Lightning moved past the Bruins this week and into third place in the Atlantic Division. Boston in fourth, followed by Ottawa, Detroit, Montreal, and Buffalo. Let's move over to the Metropolitan Division. Washington Capitals on top with 61 points, 28-10 and 5 the record. They got a 5-point lead on second place New Jersey, who checks in with 56 points. Carolina only 1 point behind the Devils for the second spot, 55 points. The Blue Jackets are now in fourth place with 46 points, 2 points ahead of the Penguins. Then you've got the Rangers, Islanders, and Flyers. As for the check of the wild card, so Boston and Columbus right now are your 2 wild card teams in the East. Ottawa is 1 point out. Detroit and Montreal and Pittsburgh are 2 points behind Columbus for that last wild card spot in the East. So obviously going to be some interesting races going down the stretch for that last wild card spot in the East.
Yeah, and as I mentioned last week, I think it's pretty much wide open. I mean, any of those teams can make it, and any of those teams can fall apart. And I think it's Boston that they're chasing more than Columbus, because Ottawa, Detroit, and Montreal are all 2 or 3 points behind the Bruins and all have 3 games in hand on the Bruins. So if they take care of their business at an average clip, they're all averaging more than a point per game. If they take care of their business, they will catch and pass the Bruins, not the Blue Jackets, for that final playoff spot.
And now that we are pretty much at the halfway point of the NHL season for pretty much every team, I think the Kings have not hit 41 yet. They're at 40.
And that's because of the canceled game.
And that's because of the suspended game. So if we go ahead and start looking at the playoff matchups in the East, you would have Washington versus Columbus and Toronto versus Boston, which is kind of funny because Toronto's like, we'll win the division. We won't have to face the Bruins. Now you might still have to face them. You'd have Florida versus Tampa Bay and New Jersey versus Carolina.
Yeah, I like the matchups for the 2-3, Florida, Tampa Bay, and New Jersey, Carolina. I obviously a lot to be determined for that wild card spot. I'm not a lot will change as we continue going, but the way Detroit's going right now, they look like a team that is looking to end their playoff drought and get back in the postseason. And the Yzer plan is finally coming to fruition.
Let's check the Western Conference. We'll start in the Central Division, where Winnipeg has 61 points, tied with Vegas and Washington for the most points in the NHL, record of 29-12-3. They've got just a 3-point lead on Minnesota, who's certainly hanging in there, and without Kirill Kaprizov as well. Pretty impressive. They've got 58 points. Dallas with 55 points in third place, followed by Colorado, St. Louis, Utah, Nashville, and Chicago. In the Pacific Division, you've got Vegas with 61 points, record of 29-11-3. Edmonton, second place, 55 points. LA is in third with 53 points. Then you've got Vancouver, Calgary, Anaheim, Seattle, and San Jose. And checking the wild card race in the West, your two wild card teams as it stands right now, Colorado and Vancouver. Calgary is 1 point out of the final wild card spot. St. Louis, Utah, Anaheim, Seattle. We'll see.
Well, I still think it's very wide open. I'm not sold on Vancouver. As I said last week, Colorado is going to make the playoffs, whether it's an automatic bid or a wild card spot. They're going to make the playoffs. Vancouver has not shown me enough yet that I can say they're definitely going to make it. Calgary, same. I mean, if you've got a negative goal differential, which both those two teams have, you're obviously not playing great hockey. And Vancouver only has 3 wins in their last 10 games. So I'm not ruling St. Louis out. I'm not ruling Utah out. I'm not even ruling the Ducks out. 7 points is not that much over a half a season. And the Ducks have been playing much better since probably early December when things were looking bleak. They've been playing pretty well lately. So I'm not ruling anything out, but I am ruling Nashville. I think it is too late. They're not going to fire the head coach, it doesn't look like, unless something happens as soon as we get off the air. We both thought Andrew Brunette would be fired by now. They've stuck with him. I think it's a mistake. We've seen the coaching change make a big difference in Detroit. Nashville could have had that same surge. They're not getting it, and I think it's too late for them to make a change this season.
So your playoff matchups as it stands going into the new week in the West, you would have Vegas versus Vancouver and Winnipeg against Colorado. Boy, that would be they met last year and Colorado kind of blew them out. So Winnipeg's having such a great regular season, but that would be such a tough first round matchup.
Absolutely brutal. Like I would rather tank it at the end of the season to fall down to second place than face Colorado in the first round. That would be brutal.
The other two matchups would be Minnesota versus Dallas and Edmonton versus LA for a fourth season.
How's that going to go, Eddie?
Fourth time's the charm, Doug, I'm sure. Fourth time's the charm. Some other notes before we close things out. Did want to mention, saw the news that Sean Higgins, the guy that's accused of killing NHL star Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew, rejected a plea deal this week that would have saw him spend 35 years in jail. Of course, he's alleged to have been driving under the influence when he struck the two brothers with his vehicle. If convicted, Higgins faces up to 30 years for each of the aggravated manslaughter charges. So I take that to mean that he could face 60 years.
Correct.
Okay.
And they were like, look, we'll give you 35. No deal. All right, you're in for 60 then. I mean, you really think you're going to be found not guilty?
It would be very hard to believe. I can't imagine any scenario in which that would happen.
And it would be a time to kill situation. You know, like you're not leaving this courtroom alive one way or the other. If you're acquitted, you're not leaving. My goodness.
Alex Chason announced his retirement. Former NHL player, played 651 career games for the Red Wings, Canucks, Flames, Stars, Senators, Oilers, and Capitals, and he was a member of the Washington Capitals Stanley Cup winning team. And newly elected Maricopa County Board of Supervisors Chairman Tom Galvin announced a formation of a committee to bring the NHL back to Arizona. And NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman confirmed that he did meet with Galvin via a Zoom call. So we'll see. They're
what a treat for Galvin.
Yeah.
That firebrand.
Yeah, so there's a group getting together to see if they can bring Arizona back, hockey back to Arizona. We shall see. All right, that'll do it for our first
let's
period.
Give you the league leaders. Let's give you some stat leaders here. The goal leader off the top.
Doug's going off script.
I am, because it's important. You know, you got.
I mentioned they know who's leading in points and goals. I mentioned it during the recap.
If you weren't paying attention to every single word,
they're hanging
Garcia
on every word.
said.
Come on, go ahead.
The goal leader is Leon Draisaitl with 31 already this season. 4 players, I should say, are tied for second with 25 goals. Braden Point, Sam Reinhart, Mark Scheifele, and Mikko Rantanen. And then William Nylander behind them with 24. Your assist leader with an already ridiculous 53 assists, Nathan MacKinnon, leads the league. Mitch Marner, a free agent at the end of the year, and he's going to get paid. 45 assists is second. Then you have Jack Eichel with 43 in third, and Connor McDavid and Nikita Kucherov tied for fourth with 42. That means your point leader is Nathan McKinnon, I should say, with 68. Leon Draisaitl with 63 is in second, and Nikita Kucherov is in third with 62 points. Your goaltending leader is, of course, Connor Hellebuck in wins with 26. Only two other people have 20 wins this year. It is Jake Ottinger and Jacob Markstrom, both in their first year with their team. Your goals against leader, for guys that have played a decent amount of games, we're not going to count the Frederick Anderson, who only played 4 games so far this year. Connor Hellebuck with a 2.02. Anthony Stolarz, will throw him in the mix, even though he's only played 17 games, 2.15. Darcy Kemper is in third with a 2.16, even though he's only played 20 games. And Jacob Markstrom, 2.19, is your fourth place for most goalies.
All right. Is anything else you want to add, or can we
I'll wait until you start closing it out, and then I'll start giving some rookie numbers.
I can mute your mic if I need to.
Oh, wow.
That'll do it for our first period of our YouTube show. If you enjoyed it, we invite you to check out the remaining 2 periods of our podcast. Search Puck Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. And if you're listening to the podcast, the second and third periods are coming up in just a moment. Looking forward to that. And if you're enjoying this podcast again, we would appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button, get us to 1,000 and more subscribers, which would help us out. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand, and we will talk to you next Monday with another edition of the Puck Podcast.